Hello, good evening, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Andy, and we're back with another F1 2019 race review. We've moved into the summer season. It's the first of the back-to-back weekends. We had a dismal French Grand Prix last weekend, and we rocked up in the Alps area. We rocked up in Austria to the Red Bull Ring. And oh boy, what a weekend did we have. Big difference from Paul Ricard just 7 days previous. Let's get straight into it and talk about what happened throughout the weekend. Now obviously there was a lot of tributes to Niki Lauda. They renamed Turn 1 after the late Austrian who passed away obviously earlier on this year. And there were some fantastic tributes, including all the stands being given a red cap and they all doffed their hat before the race start, which was a phenomenal scene to see. In the terms of rumours, Renault have confirmed that they are looking at options for 2020 in terms of someone different to Hulkenberg possibly, alongside Ricciardo. Ricciardo's got a 2-year deal, remember. Hulkenberg is out of contract at the end of this season. Now they're not saying they're going to get rid of him, but they are saying that they are considering options and making sure they've got the best lineup they can. Speaking of a driver on Renault's books, Sergei Sirotkin is obviously Renault's reserve driver, third driver, and he has now also been added as McLaren's reserve driver as well. However, Renault do have first dibs on the Russian should they require his services. Red Bull have dropped Dan Tinkham, I can never pronounce his surname, from their lineup, and obviously that means he's also lost his Super Formula drive in Japan. They replaced him with recent addition to the Red Bull Junior lineup of Patrizio O'Ward, who was racing here in F2 in place of the suspended driver whose name I can never pronounce, but everybody knows exactly who he is because he's absolutely useless. And they also attempted to change the tyre compound. Obviously they brought in the thinner tread this year. They were talking about maybe bringing it back to the 2018 spec tyre. It was a split volt 5v5, so nothing changes. Typical bureaucracy in F1. In the FP1, and it was Hamilton who was fastest ahead of Vettel, but the Mercs were on the soft tyres, Ferrari were on the medium tyres, so there was no direct comparison between the two in FP1. Hulkenberg was one of many drivers to damage his front wing on the curbs. There's quite a few serrated curbs and the sausage curbing as well, causing a lot of problems for the drivers. Hulkenberg lost his entire front wing towards the end of the session, red flagged it a few minutes early. FP2, now this is where the drama started. We've seen both Valtteri Bottas and Max Verstappen crash out of FP2 and damage their cars. Bottas coming down what is, I believe, turn 5 or 6. The car just snapped him away from him and it just into the wall. Both front wheels ripped off. Max, he crashed at the end of the lap at turn 10. The car went backwards into the wall, damaged the rear wing. Luckily for him, no gearbox damage though. You'll be happy at that much. But that was not what they needed at all. Sebastian Vettel even lost it at turn 10 as well, but he lost it a lot earlier, meaning that he was able to scrub enough speed off before hitting the wall, so he got away with that. The wind was a big issue in the second session, and that was what caught out Verstappen and Bottas as well. Leclerc topped the timesheets, but the interrupted session meant we couldn't really read too much into it. Like Paul Ricard, not many getting a qualifying run in. FP3, it was still Charles Leclerc at the top of the standings, 10th clear of Hamilton. McLaren's continuing to impress. Norris and Sainz looking really good all weekend, P6 and P8 in FP3, and those were positions that they would come quite familiar with come the end of the weekend. Into Q1, we seen Raikkonen blocked by a outlapping Lewis Hamilton up into turn number 3, which ended up under investigation. Hamilton would end up with a 3-place grid penalty because of that. That wasn't decided until after the qualifying session, but I'll throw that in now. Stroll was one of the eliminations in Q1 13 times in a row for a Canadian. He really needs to get his act together in qualifying. His teammate Perez was out as well, along with Kvyat, who was also blocked on his last lap, which was mainly by Russell. There was 3 cars in the last sequence of corners. Russell was the worst of them, and obviously Russell was also out along with his teammate Kubica. No surprise there with the Williams. Q2 it was Grosjean, Hulkenberg, Albon, Ricciardo and Sainz. Sainz was already destined for the back of the grid anyway due to a new engine, took the upgraded Renault engine, so he was going to be at the back no matter what anyway. And in Q3 it was the Ferrari on pole position, and it was Charles Leclerc taking his second pole, having taken his first one earlier on in the year at Bahrain. Just shy of 3 times clear of Hamilton, who then got his grid penalty for that block, as I say, on Raikkonen in Q1. So it ended up being Leclerc, Verstappen, Bottas. Hamilton ended up being P4 rather than down 3 places in P5 because Kevin Magnussen was P5, but he had a 5-place grid penalty to his gearbox change that he had during Friday practice. So that meant that Hamilton went down to 5th, and then when Magnussen got moved, Hamilton moved back up to 4th. Confusing, I know. There you go. So that put Magnussen down to 10th, put Norris into 5th with Raikkonen, Giovinazzi into Q3 for the second time as well, Gasly down to 9th, and Vettel was P10, then becoming P9 with Magnussen's demotion. He was unable to run entirely in Q3 due to an engine issue. Thankfully it wasn't requiring any changes to any of the elements though. Into the race we had only 2 drivers were in the position they qualified. That was Charles Leclerc on pole and Romain Grosjean down the order. Everyone else moved about because of penalties. Hulkenberg had a penalty for a new upgraded engine. Albon and Sainz, they had engine penalties as well. Russell started from the pit lane, having changed his front wing in Parc Fermé, so that was a different spec to the original one, so he had to start from pit lane. And it was also the youngest front row in history, with Leclerc and Verstappen, average age of 21 years 265 days. The young lions are coming, and the change is starting to just gently breeze in, and it's going to get bigger and bigger, and that gust is going to come along before long, but I think we already knew that anyway. Into the race itself, it was absolutely boiling in Austria over the weekend. It was a 50 plus degrees track temperature. It was easily in the mid 30s air temperature. Hottest Grand Prix in the calendar so far, and it caused a few issues for a few teams, which we'll come on to. Leclerc got away well from pole position. Verstappen ended up in anti-stall, bogged down, dropped all the way down. He was P7 by the end of lap 1. He was down behind his teammate Gasly partway through the lap before passing him at the last couple of corners. Finished the lap down in P7, and everyone thought, oh goodness me, that's, you know, watch him coming through for a podium. We didn't expect what did happen. Vettel moved up to P6, which was good for the Ferrari driver, made a really good start through the middle. Norris managed to pass Hamilton into T1, getting himself up into what was 3rd position briefly in the McLaren, but Hamilton got him back again just before turn 4. That allowed Raikkonen to sneak past him. Norris ended up losing out on P4 and back down to P5 as Hamilton says, nope, I'm the lead Brit, and Raikkonen went, I'm the elder statesman here, get back. Lap 4, Vettel was passing Norris under DRS into turn 3. Norris fighting back with the Ferrari driver, but Vettel up into P5. And then on lap 5 it was Verstappen this time. He was unable to get past Norris. He was complaining about the battery clipping as well. I'm not technical enough, but basically the battery wasn't doing what it should be. Is the easiest way I can describe that one at the moment. Maybe I'll get a more technical understanding at some point. But he did manage to get past Norris finally on lap 7. It was into turn 3 under DRS. Pretty easy move indeed. He then done the same thing under DRS on Raikkonen for P5 on lap 9. Lap 10 we've seen Albon passing Grosjean. It was down in P16. Even Russell, who started from pit lane, was up having a fight here, having already passed his teammate and Kvyat as well. He was having a look on Grosjean into turn 3 as well. The Haas struggling one more time in the race. Albon got past Magnussen repassed him, so it was back and forth down the field, and it was on lap 12 before Magnussen pitted at the end of the lap, and then he got a drive through as well for being out of position at the start. Now it looks like he's just rolled forward beyond the yellow line where his wheel should be, and it meant he couldn't detect if he was jumping the start or not, was my understanding of that. When he got a drive through, it ruined his race, not the fact that his car was ruining the race anyway. Lap 14, Leclerc's out in front by about 4 seconds from Bottas. It's Bahrain all over again with the Ferrari driver dominating and clearly in control out in front. Norris dived down the inside of turn 3 on lap 14 on Raikkonen for P6, Nice little move from the teenager. He was only 1 year old when Raikkonen debuted in 2001. As that doesn't make you feel old, I don't know what will. We've seen replays of Hamilton running over the curb in, sausage curbs, turn 1 especially, locking up into turn 4. The Mercedes were struggling with tyres and higher temperatures in the engine as well throughout the race, which would come back to get them later on. Lap 18 we see Raikkonen defending very well from Pierre Gasly into T4. Turn 4. Gasly tried again the next lap. Again, Raikkonen holds on to P7. And that continued for a few laps between those two as Gasly struggled to do what his teammate Max Verstappen was able to do a number of laps previous. Lap 22, we've seen Bottas and Vettel into the pits. Hard tyres on for both. Bottas had to wait as Vettel came in, but Vettel's tyres weren't ready. And there was a radio communication issue, meaning that the mechanics didn't hear that he was coming in, and they were late getting the tyres out. You see the replay. One of the mechanics taking a bit of a wide arc round his team just as Bottas is coming out, nearly trips up, nearly loses a tyre, but I'd rather that than getting hit by a car, so thankfully everything was okay, but it cost Vettel time. It was about an 11-second stop. Bottas came back out in P4, Vettel was down in P8. Leclerc pitted on the next lap, rejoined in P3. Vettel passed Vettel had already got past Pierre Gasly into turn 3 for P7. Hamilton was told to go long on the tyres, and Raikkonen pitted from P6, which released Vettel as well, and he rejoined down in P15, which shows you just how tight the midfield was. Lap 26, Norris and Gasly are finally in the pits. They've got the soft tyres on, having got them that far, which was very good. Put the hard tyres on. Norris back out in P11, Gasly P13, still behind Raikkonen. That battle continued on as well. Lap 28, Hamilton on the radio complaining about a loss of downforce, possibly from hitting the curbs, and then he pits on lap 31 from the lead of the race. Puts on the hard tyres. It's an 11-second stop as he changed the front wing as well. He had picked up damage and losing downforce. Couldn't see it visibly, but you could easily see it on the telemetry. And that was just one of a number of issues for Mercedes through the race. He rejoined in P5 behind Sebastian Vettel due to the time lost. Verstappen was now in the lead, but still to pit, and he came in next lap and rejoined in P4, so he'd managed to jump Hamilton during the pit stop phase. This put Leclerc back in the lead from Bottas and Vettel, while Gasly finally on lap 33 got past Raikkonen for P9. It took him, about 15 laps to do what his teammate took 1? That just, the mind boggles. We'll come back to that later. Lap 38, Norris is on the back of the yet to stop Ricciardo. They'd left Ricciardo out very long in that Renault. That was over P7. He tried to get past on lap 39 into turn 3, but Ricciardo cut him off. That allowed Gasly to try and have a go at Norris, but it was all as you were, nobody able to make the pass, and it took a few laps before Norris was finally able to pass Ricciardo for P7. Pretty easy under DRS into turn 4, where at the same time his teammate Carlos Sainz, who had started at the back of the field, remember, P19 on the grid for the Spaniard, he was up to P6, finally pitted after a long first stint, rejoined down in P14 again, showing just how close the midfield was. P6 down to P14 in the space of a 20 odd second time in pit lane. Lap 45 in Gasly, the salvation finally happened. He had finally got past Ricciardo, so he wasn't held up behind the Renault for too long. Well, Verstappen was closing in on Vettel, and both of them were catching Bottas, pulling away from Hamilton. The Mercs had been asked to lift and coast to cool temperatures down, and that was something they had to do pretty much all race long. Lap 48, Ricciardo's finally in the pits, rejoins P14. Verstappen is now into DRS range from Vettel, but he can't get past just yet as the Ferrari driver holds on. But 2 laps later, it's finally done. The Red Bull goes ahead of the Ferrari at the third attempt, a much better exit out of turn 3, and he's passed well before T4 using DRS to help him. Vettel decided to pit and get a new set of soft tyres on, rejoining P5 behind Hamilton, so Ferrari switched him onto a 2-stopper at that point, and it only took 5 more laps, lap 55, before Verstappen was within DRS range on Bottas for P2, and Leclerc only 5 seconds up the road. But then we got a radio message, Verstappen, I'm losing power, given a fail mode to get rid. It was a sensor on the exhaust, nothing major to worry about. And then on lap 56, it was an easy pass on Bottas, who was having a lift and coast very early into turn 3 under DRS P2 for the Dutchman. We had a grandstand finish on our hands. Lap 59, Verstappen, is told full power to the end, so they decided to give the Honda engine V-TEC power for the end of the race. And by lap 62, he had a gap down to 3 seconds. He was setting purple sector, purple laps, fastest lap. Vettel was catching Hamilton for P4 as well. It was looking very exciting, and with 6 laps to go, lap 66, Verstappen is finally within DRS range on the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. They were both catching up to Gasly as well to lap him. They managed to get by, but it did cost Leclerc a few tenths of a second, and he was telling his engineer, leave me alone, as his tyres were starting to go off a bit. They got a bit more wear on them than they expected. Lap 67, and Verstappen makes his first attempt to get through, but Leclerc parks the car very nicely into turn 3 and 4, no way through for the Red Bull. Finally, Verstappen dives down the inside into turn 3, but Leclerc gets a better exit on the older tyres and holds the inside line for turn 4, and then it happened. Lap 69 into turn number 3, Verstappen up the inside, later on the brakes, they bump wheels on the exit of the corner. Leclerc's pushed off the track, but Verstappen is through and into the lead of the race. And I'm going to come to that in just a moment, because the other part is on the second to last lap, lap 70 of 71. Vettel passed Hamilton into turn 4. They'll move with Verstappen and Leclerc under investigation by the stewards. It took 3 odd hours after the race, but they decided no further action. And I have to agree, I did think because of the precedent set with other penalties that they were going to obviously give a penalty to Verstappen, but they didn't. He'd gone up the inside, he was alongside Leclerc, he kept the same steering angle on the whole time, and he was able to then make the move through. So that was him through and into the lead, and that was then the victory. And it was a brilliant race from Verstappen after the anti-stall kicked in at the start, and he made his all the way back up to P1 and win. First victory for Honda since Button at Hungary in 2006, and he lapped his teammate on merit, which is frightening considering he was behind Gasly for a very small margin in the race as well. Leclerc did nothing wrong. He'd done a great job, did Charles Leclerc. Easily the fastest Ferrari all weekend, great pole position, but the tyres got more wear than expected. He felt hard done by the Verstappen move, but it's his best finish to date, having gone P3 before. Bottas couldn't do very much, struggling with the overheating. P3 was the best he could have done. Didn't have the pace of Leclerc or Verstappen, but had enough to keep ahead of Hamilton and Vettel. Vettel with a great start up to P6 in the opening laps, but again didn't have the pace of his teammate. Done 2 stops, past Hamilton with 2 to go, but yeah, again, not really much he could have done there. Hamilton, similar to Bottas, lots of overheating, meaning having to lift and coast. Change of the front wing on the first, and his stop didn't help either. Still 31 points clear of Bottas, so at the top of the standings. Norris best of the rest, ahead of Hamilton on lap 1 for a small bit before being repassed, but brilliant drive again from the teenager who drove well. Gasly P7, briefly ahead of Verstappen on lap 1 and ended up getting lapped by the end of the race, so that's not good at all. His season needs a shot in the arm very quickly. Sainz with a driver of the day race, in my opinion. Amazing drive from the back of the field. New engine meant penalty, started 19th, finished on 8th, ran very long. McLaren looking good again, I hope they can continue this form. Raikkonen P9, double points for Alfa Romeo, solid race from the Finn, in early and then held it well, and Giovinazzi actually had better pace, it looked like, than Raikkonen through the weekend, but he finally gets a point after his second outing in Q3 and the first points that he's ever had in F1 and first points of the season. Hopefully the Italian can keep that one going through the rest of the year. Perez was P11, he was out in Q1, made a mistake on his final flying lap. but again, the car wasn't really capable of much more. It didn't have the pace of those ahead, so P11 best could have hoped for. Ricciardo was kept out long on his first stint. The Renault seems a bit Jekyll and Hyde at times, seems to be good some tracks, terrible at others, but P12, the best he could have done. Struggled with the brakes all weekend is what he was finding. Hulkenberg pretty similar, even beat Ricciardo in qualifying. We just seemed stuck between the racing points through most of the race, couldn't do very much at all. Got passed by Ricciardo on the last lap. Stroll, 13th Q1 elimination, as I say, in a row. Similar to Hulkenberg, just seemed to be stuck in the same place most of the race, but not the worst considering the car wasn't on the pace at all. Albon started in 19th after his engine upgrade as well, past Kvyat, and again just seemed stuck there in the middle for most of the race. Failed to get past Stroll in the last lap. Grosjean couldn't match Magnussen's qualifying pace, complained of a balance issue, got a poor start as well, which didn't help, and the tyres just not working. They're warm on the outside and it's cold on the middle. It's like a very poorly cooked burger, and it's not helping Haas at all. Kvyat was impeded in Q1, or he could have had faster pace and further up the grid. A slow stop didn't help him, and again just in that midfield just seemed to get stuck there and couldn't really do much. Russell 18th ahead of Magnussen and Kubica from a pit lane start. This boy is doing everything that he needs to and more in a car which is terrible. He needs a much better car to show what he can really do. Magnussen, brilliant qualifying lap for P5, but gearbox penalty meant he was going to obviously drop down, and the tyre issues and the drive through did not help the day. And Kubica, not the same pace as Russell, he's missing a couple of attempts. Had a few early battles, but after lap 5, down the field, not happening. He needs to match Russell very, very quickly. All 20 drivers finished the race. I think it's like the 7th time that every driver has finished the race in F1 history. Hamilton still leads 197 points, Bottas on 166. Verstappen now 126 in third, 3 ahead of Vettel and 123 in fourth. Leclerc on to 105, Gasly on 43, Sainz 30, Norris 22, Raikkonen 21 and Ricciardo rounding out the top 10 on 16. Merck are leading the way in the constructors, 363, Ferrari on 228, Red Bull on 169, McLaren 52, best of the rest, then Renault on 32, Alfa Romeo on 22, Racing Point 19, Toro Rosso 17, Haas 16, and Williams still on nil points. And that is it for what was quite an exciting Austrian Grand Prix. Really the shot in the arm that F1 needed after Paul Ricard. It'll be back in 2 weeks time, and so will I for the next race review, which is Silverstone, the British Grand Prix, what could be the last British Grand Prix considering they've terminated their contract basically. I'll go through that in more detail next time out, but thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, do hit the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, you'll be notified of any other videos that go live. And until next time, my name's Andy, and I'll see you again soon. Ta-da!